An HOA violation notice plastered on my windshield. Bold red letters scream, HOA regulation violation. The paper flutters slightly in the breeze, taunting me. I appear, fury etched across my face. My fingers crumple the notice as I glare toward Karen's house. There she stands, framed in her window, phone clutched in manicured fingers, a smirk of pure satisfaction stretching across her face. My voice drops low, determination burning in every word. Karen thinks she makes the rules around here, but she has no idea what I'm about to do next. Hello everyone, welcome to HOA Nightmare Channel. Today I will tell you a story that makes me very upset. I've lived peacefully in Oak Ridge Estates for 5 years now. My modest 2-bedroom home sits on a quiet cul-de-sac, where neighbors wave as they walk their dogs and children ride bikes until sunset. Nothing extraordinary ever happens here, and that's precisely why I chose it. Last month, I finally purchased my dream car, a midnight blue Audi A4. Not brand new, but new to me. After 6 years of overtime shifts and brown bag lunches, I'd saved enough for the down payment. Every morning, I'd draw the blinds just to glimpse it sitting in my driveway, its polished surface catching the early light. Childish? Perhaps. But when you've grown up sharing everything with 3 siblings, owning something beautiful that's entirely yours feels revolutionary. My property isn't sprawling, but the concrete driveway comfortably fits 2 vehicles. The HOA guidelines clearly state, residents may park personal vehicles in their driveways provided they are in working condition. For 5 years, I'd parked there without incident, my old Honda Civic never drawing a second glance. I loved the predictable rhythm of our community. Miss S. Patterson walking her corgi at precisely 7:15 each morning. Mr. Gonzalez meticulously trimming his hedges every second Saturday. The neighborhood kids setting up a lemonade stand on the first warm day of spring. But that comfortable predictability shattered when Karen Westfield moved into the vacant colonial across the street. Karen arrived with a moving truck and an attitude. Mid-50s, with a perfectly maintained blonde bob and perpetually pursed lips. She introduced herself to everyone as the new HOA compliance officer. Not board member, not volunteer, officer. The title was self-appointed, but she wore it like a badge of honor. Within a week, she distributed friendly reminder flyers about garbage can placement. By month 2, she'd created a neighborhood watch program that seemed primarily focused on monitoring other residents' activities rather than preventing crime. Her Facebook posts in the community group always began with, "As many of you know, I take our community standards very seriously." Karen's approach was calculating. She'd smile while delivering criticism. Those beautiful hydrangeas would look even lovelier if they were 2 inches further from the sidewalk, as per section 4.3 of our bylaws. Her voice always lilted upward at the end, masking demands as helpful suggestions. I first landed in Karen's crosshairs 3 days after bringing home my Audi. A folded note appeared under my windshield wiper. Vehicles should be garaged when possible to maintain neighborhood aesthetics. Just looking out for our property values. KW. I tossed it in the recycling bin and thought nothing more of it. Then came the emails first to me directly, then copied to the entire HOA board about my unsightly vehicle storage practices. When I continued parking in my own driveway, Karen escalated. Yesterday's mail contained an official HOA violation notice with a $150 fine. The reason? Improper vehicle placement causing visual disruption to neighborhood cohesion. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just annoying. She was dangerous, someone who wielded rules like weapons, who found power in others' frustration. And now, she'd made me her primary target. Karen's vendetta against my parking habits morphed into something far more sinister over the next 2 weeks. What began as passive-aggressive notes evolved into a full-blown public shaming campaign. Every morning, I'd draw my blinds to find her standing across the street, iPhone raised, documenting my violation with the dedication of a wildlife photographer, capturing an endangered species. The photos appeared on the HOA Facebook group by noon each day. Day 8 of ongoing violations, she'd caption them, as if documenting a criminal spree. Her posts grew increasingly dramatic. Another day where property values plummet because someone refuses to follow simple community guidelines. The comments section filled with her own replies, agreeing with herself using different tones, as if conducting a one-woman outrage orchestra. Yesterday, a certified letter arrived. Karen had escalated to formal HOA channels. The envelope contained a 3-page document outlining my persistent and willful violations of aesthetic standards. The letter concluded with an ultimatum: move my car to street parking or face daily fines of $75. The document bore only Karen's signature, though she'd added HOA Enforcement Committee Chair beneath her name, a committee I strongly suspected consisted of exactly one member. I stood in my kitchen, letter trembling in my hand, a strange heat rising from my collar to my temples. 5 years of peaceful living reduced to this absurd battle over where I parked my own car on my own property. The injustice of it burned like acid in my chest. "This is insane," I whispered to my empty house. "It's my driveway, my property. I checked the actual HOA bylaws 3 times. There's nothing prohibiting driveway parking." I paced my kitchen, rehearsing arguments to an invisible audience. Who made her the neighborhood dictator? What gives her the right to decide where I park? Sleep evaded me that night. I tossed beneath my sheets, imagining confrontations where I eloquently defended my rights while neighbors applauded. By morning, exhaustion had hardened into resolve. I would speak with Karen directly. Surely face-to-face conversation could resolve this madness. That resolution lasted precisely until 9:17 am. I was finishing my coffee when the distinctive beep, beep, beep of a reversing truck cut through the morning quiet. I rushed to my window to witness a tow truck backing into my driveway, its yellow lights flashing like a warning beacon. A man in overalls was already attaching chains to my Audi's undercarriage. "Hey, stop!" I shouted, bursting through my front door, still wearing pajama bottoms and a hastily thrown-on T-shirt. "What are you doing? That's my car on my property." The driver, a weathered man with sympathetic eyes, paused. "Sorry, buddy. Got a call from HOA enforcement. Papers say this vehicle's in violation and needs removal." "That's impossible," I sputtered, bare feet cold against the concrete. "You can't tow a car from private property without owner consent." As if summoned by theatrical timing, Karen appeared at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, a clipboard clutched against her chest like armor. "I have the authorization right here," she announced, voice carrying across the morning air for the benefit of neighbors peeking through curtains. Section 12, paragraph 3, gives the HOA authority to remove vehicles violating community standards after proper notification, which you've received multiple times. I stepped toward her, conscious of my ridiculous appearance, but too angry to care. "Karen, this has gone too far. There's nothing in the bylaws prohibiting driveway parking. I've read every page." Her smile never reached her eyes. "Perhaps you missed the amendments passed last quarter. As enforcement chair, I'm simply doing my duty to maintain our community's standards." She tilted her head slightly. "Nothing personal. This is my property," I insisted, voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. "You can't just make up rules to target specific neighbors you don't like." Karen's expression hardened, the pretense of neighborly concern evaporating. "This is a rule-governed community. If you can't abide by our standards," she paused, examining her manicured nails, "perhaps Oak Ridge Estates isn't the right fit for you." The tow operator shifted uncomfortably between us, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. "Ma'am," he interjected, "without police present, I can't legally remove a vehicle from private property if the owner objects." Karen's smile faltered momentarily before she recovered. "Fine. We'll do this the official way." She turned on her heel, calling over her shoulder, "This isn't over." Not by a long shot. As she retreated across the street, phone already pressed to her ear, I stood guard beside my car, heart pounding with a mixture of relief and dread. I'd won this skirmish, but Karen's expression promised war. The morning after the tow truck incident, I found an envelope taped to my front door. No HOA letterhead this time, just my name, scrawled in Karen's unmistakable handwriting. Inside was an invoice for $750 in accumulated fines. A yellow sticky note attached read, "Payment due within 7 days or legal action will commence. This is your final warning." My hands trembled as I read the itemized list. $150 for the original visual disruption violation, $75 daily for continued non-compliance, and most outrageously $200 for administrative costs related to enforcement actions. The total seemed designed to inflict maximum financial pain while staying just below the threshold that would make hiring an attorney worthwhile. I sank onto my porch steps, the morning sun offering no warmth against the chill spreading through my body. How had parking my car in my own driveway spiraled into this nightmare? The unfairness of it all constricted my chest, making each breath shallow and unsatisfying. "This can't be legal," I whispered to myself, the words hanging in the quiet morning air. "She can't just invent fines and expect me to pay them." That evening, I spotted Karen standing in her driveway, speaking animatedly to 2 other neighbors. When she noticed me watching, she pointed directly at my house, her expression triumphant. The message was clear: I was being made an example of. The neighbors nodded solemnly as Karen continued her performance, occasionally glancing my way with expressions of disapproval. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed restlessly, imagining financial ruin, legal battles I couldn't afford, and the humiliation of being forced to move. By 3 a.m., desperation had crystallized into something harder, more resolute. If Karen wanted war, I would no longer show up unarmed. "Enough," I said aloud to my darkened bedroom. "This ends now." The next morning, I called in sick to work the first time in 3 years and spread the HOA bylaws across my dining room table. I would find something, anything, to fight back with. Hours blurred together as I pored over every paragraph, every footnote, every amendment. My eyes burned, but determination kept me focused. By mid-afternoon, I'd filled a legal pad with notes and discovered 3 critical facts. First, Karen's enforcement committee didn't officially exist in any HOA documentation. Second, all fines required board majority approval, not just one person's signature. And third, most damning of all, the amendment Karen claimed prohibited driveway parking had never been properly ratified according to HOA procedures. She's been bluffing, I realized, a surge of adrenaline cutting through my exhaustion. This whole time, she's been counting on no one checking her authority. But the most revealing discovery came when I cross-referenced Karen's own property against the very standards she so zealously enforced. Her pristine colonial violated no fewer than 5 HOA regulations: unapproved garden structures, non-compliant exterior lighting, excessive holiday decorations well past seasonal guidelines, a fence that exceeded height restrictions, and most ironically, improper waste bin placement. I laughed aloud, the sound startling in my quiet house. She's the biggest violator on the block. That night, I drafted a formal letter to the HOA board. I outlined Karen's unauthorized actions, her fabricated committee, and her personal violations. I attached photographs, bylaw citations, and a timeline of her harassment. The document ran to 11 pages, thorough, factual, and devastating. As I sealed the envelope, a strange calm settled over me. This wasn't just about parking anymore. This was about standing up to a bully who'd terrorized not just me, but likely others before me. "If she wants to play with rules," I said to my reflection in the window, "let's see how she handles someone who actually reads them." The next morning, I hand-delivered copies to each board member's home before Karen's daily surveillance began. By afternoon, my phone rang the HOA president himself, requesting an emergency meeting. "We've received your documentation," he said, his tone grave. "I want to assure you this matter will be addressed immediately." As I hung up, I caught sight of Karen through my window. She stood in her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing frantically. Someone had warned her. Our eyes met across the street, and for the first time since she'd moved in, I didn't look away. The game had changed. The hunter had become the hunted. Have you ever encountered someone like Karen in your neighborhood? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences dealing with overzealous rule enforcers. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening in the community center. As I entered the room, the tension was palpable. Board members sat at a long table facing rows of chairs, many already filled with curious neighbors. Karen was seated in the front row, back rigid, arms crossed defensively across her chest. When she spotted me, her eyes narrowed to slits. I took a seat near the back, my portfolio of evidence clutched tightly against my chest. Inside was the culmination of 3 days' frantic work. Time-stamped photographs of Karen documenting my car, screenshots of her inflammatory social media posts, copies of her unauthorized fine notices, and most damning drone footage of her illegal backyard structure. "This meeting will come to order," announced Gerald, the HOA president, a retired judge with a no-nonsense demeanor. "We're here to address serious allegations regarding HOA enforcement procedures and potential bylaw violations." Karen immediately raised her hand. "If this is about the ongoing violations at 1542 Oak Ridge Lane, I have extensive documentation." Gerald cut her off with a raised palm. "Miss Winters, you'll have your opportunity to speak. However, you are not here as an enforcement officer, but as a respondent to complaints." The color drained from Karen's face as Gerald gestured for me to approach. My legs felt leaden as I walked to the front, aware of every eye in the room following my progress. I placed my evidence on the table, hands trembling slightly. "For the past month," I began, my voice steadier than I expected, "I've been subjected to harassment regarding parking my vehicle in my own driveway. What began as notes escalated to unauthorized fines, threats of towing, and public humiliation." I methodically presented my evidence. The progression of Karen's notes, the social media campaign, the falsified committee letterhead, and the non-existent parking amendment. With each revelation, murmurs rippled through the audience. "Furthermore," I continued, pulling out the aerial photographs, "while Miss Winters has appointed herself the neighborhood's compliance officer, her property contains multiple violations, most notably this storage structure built without permits or HOA approval." The photographs showed Karen's backyard shed, not the charming garden structure she described to neighbors, but a substantial 200-square-foot building with electrical wiring, clearly violating both HOA regulations and county building codes. "I'm not alone in experiencing this treatment," I added, passing out statements I'd collected. 7 other residents have provided accounts of similar harassment. As I returned to my seat, the room erupted in conversation. Karen shot to her feet, face flushed with anger. "This is character assassination," she sputtered. "That structure is a temporary garden feature, and I've been performing a thankless service keeping this community up to standards." Gerald's gavel silenced the room. "Miss Winters, county records show no permits for that structure, and our bylaws clearly require approval for any permanent construction." What followed was extraordinary. One by one, neighbors stood to share their experiences. Threatening notes for garbage cans left out an hour too long, fines for children's toys visible in yards, harassment over holiday decorations Karen deemed tacky. "The shed was just the beginning," revealed Gerald, removing his glasses. "Our investigation uncovered that Miss Winters has been depositing collected fines into a personal account, not HOA coffers. We've referred this matter to authorities for potential fraud charges." Karen's composure crumbled. "You don't understand what it takes to maintain standards. Without me, this neighborhood would fall into chaos." The board's decision was unanimous. Karen was removed from all HOA positions, ordered to dismantle her illegal structure within 30 days, and fined $2,500 for her violations, ironically, the exact sum she had collected from neighbors through her fraudulent enforcement scheme. As the meeting adjourned, Neighbors approached to thank me. Some admitted they'd been too intimidated to stand up to Karen themselves. One elderly gentleman clasped my hand, eyes moist. For 2 years, I've been afraid to sit on my own front porch because it had decreased property values. Thank you. Walking home under the evening sky, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. The neighborhood seemed different somehow, as if a shadow had lifted, allowing everyone to breathe freely again. 3 weeks after the fateful HOA meeting, the neighborhood had transformed. Karen's infamous blue sedan no longer patrolled the streets each morning. Her curtains remained drawn most days, and on the rare occasions she emerged, she scurried between her front door and car with downcast eyes. The county inspector's bright yellow violation notice remained taped to her backyard structure, a daily reminder of her fall from self-appointed authority. According to neighborhood gossip, she'd hired 3 different contractors, who all refused the job after learning the structure's history. Poetic justice, some called it. Meanwhile, I parked my car in my driveway with newfound appreciation for this simple freedom. No more anxious glances out the window, no more dread when checking my mailbox. The $2,500 fine Karen paid was allocated toward the community garden project, transforming her punishment into something beautiful for everyone. Last Saturday, while washing my car in the driveway, another previously forbidden activity, my neighbor Tom wandered over with 2 cold beers. To the neighborhood hero, he toasted, handing me a bottle. "You know, I was thinking we should make you a special sign." "A sign?" I asked, wiping suds from my hands. "Yeah," he grinned, framing an imaginary rectangle in the air. "Karen-free parking zone. We could put it right there." We laughed until tears streamed down our faces, the sound carrying across lawns where children now played freely without fear of being reported for excessive noise violations. At the next HOA meeting, my first as a newly elected board member, we passed amendments requiring transparency in rule enforcement and establishing a proper appeals process. The atmosphere was collaborative rather than combative, neighbors discussing issues as equals rather than adversaries. As for Karen, she listed her house for sale last week. The for sale sign in her yard stands slightly crooked, a minor violation she once would have raged against. Nobody has bothered to point it out. Sometimes justice isn't just about winning. It's about restoring balance, reclaiming community, and remembering that rules exist to serve people, not the other way around. This tale stands as powerful testimony that bullies who abuse authority should never prevail. Karen's downfall wasn't merely about parking disputes. It was about a community reclaiming its dignity from someone who weaponized rules for personal power. What's your take on Karen's behavior? Was justice served? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If these real-life justice stories resonate with you, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications to catch every new upload. Your support fuels these narratives of everyday heroes standing up against neighborhood tyrants. Thank you for staying until the end of this wild ride. Remember, whether it's at work, in your community, or online, never let a Karen ruin your day. Sometimes the most powerful response to unreasonable demands isn't compliance, but calmly gathering evidence and taking a principled stand.